This was no ordinary morning in Mount Lake Terrace, Washington, where a brutal and baffling crime would unfold, one that would shock the community and raise more questions than answers.
Around the Northwest, a woman in Seattle is now facing charges for murdering her own father with an ice-climbing pickaxe.
KOMO's Ryan Sims reports it all began after an argument over turning on the lights inside.
The question on everybody's mind, what would drive this daughter to allegedly kill her father, and so violently?
According to court papers, the first signs of trouble in this case happened when neighbors heard smashing glass. All of it on election night when the presidential race was about to be announced.
My first thought was, are people just getting upset over this election, or is someone actually trying to break it in?
Police were called to the home of the accused, and her father was found laying there lifeless. Windows shattered across the entire house, and the father's lifeless body laying on the floor. Her father was struck multiple times with a pickaxe. The most disturbing part of the scene, the daughter sitting there next to her father's body, waiting for him to die. She was covered in blood, and she was also found clapping her hands, seemingly in a trance-like state.
Prosecutors say the actual answer was much more horrific. They say 33-year-old Corey Burke smashed nearly every window in this home immediately after killing her father with an ice axe.
The lights were off, and only two people live in that house, and only one of them was on the street.
This woman lives near Burke. As she watched the election results, she said she noticed flashing lights outside. She then says she noticed Burke covered in blood.
My thought was that something calamitous had happened in the house.
What led to this unthinkable act? When authorities arrived, they were immediately struck by how calm the daughter appeared to be, almost detached from the violent scene around her. She showed no signs of panic, no signs of remorse. Instead, she simply sat there, eerily still, as police tried to understand what had transpired.
And my first instinct was, did she kill her father with her bare hands?
Prosecutors say that that is exactly what happened, except the killing also involved an ice axe. All of it after they say Burke snapped at her father for simply turning on the lights inside this home.
When things like this happen, the whole neighborhood gets traumatized.
Burke has now been charged with first-degree murder.
In what usually is a safe, upscale home, the discovery of a brutal murder left investigators scratching their head. To piece together the truth, it would take more than the usual whodunit.
This is our suspect, 33-year-old Corey Burke. She was already kind of in the public sphere before all of this because of her marriage to transgender writer Samantha Lee Allen. You may know Allen as the editor of the Condé Nast transgender news publication called Them, or as the author of Real Queer America, LGBT Stories from Red States. Burke also had a high-profile career, working as a training program manager at Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' spacecraft company.
At first, many assumed that she was maybe part of a domestic dispute, but as the investigation progressed, the truth became much more complicated. It was not just a crime of passion, there was something much deeper going on, or there appeared to be some mental health aspects at play.
When Seattle officers arrived, there were large amounts of glass shards in the front yard and driveway of the home. This indicated the windows were likely shattered from inside the house. According to court docs, as they approached the residence, they heard a loud clapping sound from inside. That's when officers came face to face with Corey Burke, who was covered in blood. Officers later described her appearance as disheveled, saying her hair was matted in the back, and in the front, it was stuck to her face with blood.
From what we know about the accused's history, she worked at a very sophisticated company, Blue Origin, that makes spacecraft. And so, was there any types of signs or reports for emotional stability? Was she recently let go, or was she on leave, or have any reports that she was going through any mental health issues? We don't know that yet, and we may never know.
Corey appeared to have a light layer of blood on the right side of her face, on her cheek, under her eye, and onto her nose. She also had a line of blood on her lower lip that was thicker and chunkier. This next part is a disturbing description. The officer wrote, quote, "The blood created a lip liner effect of blood just inside the curve of her lower lip. This is also where the hair from her head was stuck to the blood on her lip." Beyond that, Burke had scratches on her left hand and fingers. She was wrapped up in a blanket. When officers approached Burke, they asked what the clapping noise was. And Corey reported to Officer M. Roy that she had been clapping inside her home because she was happy, so she started clapping.
To understand what happened that day, investigators had turned to the mental state of the accused. In her interviews with the police, she revealed unsettling thoughts that suggested a profound break from reality. At one point, she described her feeling as being reborn on her birthday, as if her violent actions were justified by a larger, almost spiritual purpose. What did this mean? Was this a moment of temporary madness, or was this something much more deeper and troubling at play?
She then told officers she wasn't sure how she'd broken the windows in her house or where the blood on her face came from, but she did say officers were not allowed inside. At this point, officers decided Burke needed to be seen at the hospital. According to court docs, they planned to detain her under emergent detention of the Involuntary Treatment Act. Basically, Burke's current state was off, and officers felt she couldn't care for herself and may be a danger to herself or to others.
Where the defense may rely on the insanity plea, arguing that she was not capable of understanding right from wrong at the time of the murder. While insanity defenses rarely succeed in criminal cases, this may be a central part of the legal strategy.
As Burke was taken from the scene in an ambulance, neighbors approached the police, telling them Burke's father, 67-year-old Timothy Burke, also lived in the home. Neighbors reported that Tim, quote, had a list of medical issues. They also reported that Tim did not leave the home often. This info concerned the officers, so they entered the home in what they called a community caretaking capacity, basically to make sure Burke's dad was inside and safe. In a lower level bedroom, officers located the body of an older white male lying face down on the carpeted floor.
You know, the prosecutor may say this was not an impulsive act. The accused had plenty of time to reflect, and that she intended to kill her father. The fact that she waited for her father to stop breathing, and that there may not have been anybody else in that house, that the father was pretty much homebound and this wasn't a caretaker, could point to what the prosecution will be arguing.
This man, later identified as Timothy Burke, was unconscious and had cuts on his left side, back, head, and ears. He also had what appeared to be a bite mark on his back. Once upstairs, police found a silver and blue ice pickaxe laying on the floor. The axe had blood on it, and soon officers determined it's what Burke likely used to murder her father just before they'd arrived.
Her words were chilling in a calm, almost dispassionate tone. She described watching her father die as if it was necessary for her, as just a step for her own emotional release. She even mentioned that she wanted to help people change their attachment with their parents, a statement that left investigators wondering if her actions were part of a larger, distorted view of reality.
Later, Burke told investigators she knew, quote, it needed to happen today. She told investigators she had been reborn near her birthday, which was October 25th, and that she knew there was something important about Election Day.
When someone makes statements like this, detached from reality of what they've done, it points to a serious mental health issue. This wasn't just anger or frustration. It was potentially a sign of deep emotional and psychological disconnect from the world. The clapping, the calmness, the happiness that she expressed next to her father's body, the feeling of being better after his death, these are signs that this person was not grounded in a normal framework of emotion. And then there was also this mention.
Burke also noted that she was overwhelmed, saying she was working to set boundaries with her father about his emotions. About this, she said she wanted to help people change their attachment to their parents. She stated that she herself felt hyper-focused and disorganized when it came to her own attachment to her father. Here's where things get really intense though, and this is a direct quote from the affidavit. She then began to cry, saying she was upset because she thought she had acted too soon. Corey stated that tonight, when her father started arguing with her about the lights being shut off, that she just freaked out. Corey whispered to me, "Will it help?"
And then there was also this mention of politics. The accused shared that she was deeply disturbed by the recent election, specifically the victory of Donald Trump. She claimed the political climate triggered her mental breakdown. Did the political climate trigger this mental breakdown? It seemed there was a lot more issues at play, but that could have been a contributing factor. Or was there something even deeper going on?
I responded with yes. Corey then whispered, "I killed him." Burke told officers she was triggered when her father refused to turn off the lights, and she was upset about the election results, saying, quote, "Well, now the president is going to be Donald Trump."
As the case moves forward, one of the biggest challenges will be determining the accused's responsibility. Was this a crime of passion brought on by emotional stress? Was this a cold, calculated murder carried out by someone who was deeply detached from reality? Or was this purely a mental health breakdown?
Burke admitted to using an ice axe to kill her father, later saying she had to choke him, quote, and it was really hard, really effing hard. At some points, Burke says she felt she wasn't going to be able to choke him, so she bit him.
The legal arguments will focus on her mental health, with her defense team suggesting that her mental illness played a central role in what happened, very likely. Or maybe they even go with the insanity defense, which is very often not successful, but something that is infrequently tried.
The next part is also a direct quote from the affidavit, and it's chilling to say the least. Quote, Corey stated that once her father went limp, she felt better. Corey said that she then hit him with the ice pickaxe in the head several more times. Corey then sat next to her father and watched him until she saw that he was not breathing anymore. Corey then went upstairs and broke all of her windows in her home as an act of liberation. After all this, Corey Burke was charged with first-degree murder.
As this unfolds, it raises critical questions about the intersection between mental health and the criminal justice system. Could better access to mental health have prevented this tragedy? And what does this mean for society overall? When individuals struggle silently with mental health until it reaches a breaking point? Or have any reports that she was going through any mental health issues? We don't know that yet, and we may never know. But you can see how untreated mental health illness can have very serious consequences if left untreated. The consequences can obviously be devastating, not just for the person suffering, but for the people around them. So if you or anyone you know are struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to a professional or support network near you. No one should have to suffer in silence.